Every time people tell you, I wish I had enjoyed it more, yeah? Basically, that means you did enjoy it. It means you enjoyed it so enormously much, you're still missing it. If ever anybody tells you, oh, I wish I'd just known how nice that period was, it means they did know how nice it was. So remember that time in 53 when we were out on the beach?
I mean, I think, and this is probably a personal view, that it comes sort of from fear and ignorance. There's a misunderstanding of mental health problems, and there has been categorised over the year, and there's a fear of it. You can't see it like a broken arm, and therefore you're not really quite sure how it works or what it means.
Stigma, I suppose, is as much about fear and attitudes and cultural differences as well.
People form their attitudes in the community by what they see in the media as portrayed as what is mental illness, what is mental health, and what is associated with this.
I think that it's a learned behaviour as you're growing up, and people around you tell you, keep that quiet, don't discuss that openly, it could impact on your job prospects. So be careful to hold the story of any mental health difficulty that you have close to your heart and don't speak about it.
What's the problem? They've always been up there.
People think that if you talk about depression that you're somehow not like them, you know, that your internal processes are not modelable by them. So they think that maybe you'll go off the handle, or you know, that you shouldn't be left alone with sharp knives, or you know. The reality is that I've talked to people a dozen times when I've been depressed, and then the one time when I'm not, and I say to them, hey, you know, I've suffered from this thing. Now I'm lucky I didn't suffer as badly as many people do, but they, you know, the one time that I say it to them, they kind of go, oh, And you think, well, I've talked to you a million times when I was actually depressed, and I'm not now. So why now do you feel all weird? When people talk about doing push-ups and doing squats and reps, nobody thinks that they're physically weak. Everyone thinks, hey, they must be physically strong. The same with when I hear people talking about, you know, how they're overcoming depression, I think, wow, they're mentally strong. Like, that takes a lot to come out and say that. It takes a great deal of courage for somebody to stand up and say, I'm not well, I'm not feeling great. And it shouldn't take all this bravery. You shouldn't feel like you have to, you know, that you're doing something hugely momentous. You should be able to just talk about it freely. But unfortunately, that's not the way. And the stigma is there. So I guess people are afraid of that, and families don't want to talk about it because it's somehow some sort of slight on the family name, or they've got, you know, a son with mental health problems, or a daughter who has issues or suffers with her nerves. And I go, shut up, that's all, you know, 60s Ireland crap. You know, if you're not mindful of this stuff, then we are going to run into a massive, massive problem. I mean, 3 times as many people committed suicide last year as died on the roads, and yet we have gay burn and the road safety authorities and tons of money being shoved into that for a third as many deaths.
Stigma is a negative association surrounding people in relation to mental health. It could be surrounding a person's perception of a person with mental illness, their ability to cope, their ability to have family, form relationships. It can affect how they get help, how they are perceived, how they get jobs, their health insurance. And for this reason, stigma surrounding mental illness is a huge problem.
The surveys show us, they continue to show us, that people who are in employment still will not disclose that they have an issue of poor mental health or emotional unwellness for fear of being discriminated against.
In 2010, Amnesty International commissioned Dublin City University to undertake research into the lived experience of people with mental health problems and their experience of unfair treatment. 96% of people said they had been treated unfairly because of their mental health problem. in Ireland today, and we found that a lot of the experiences were being shunned by family and friends, also experiences in the workplace, not only trying to get a job but also in keeping a job, and in terms of trying to get housing, and it's kind of across the spectrum of humanity, your lived life really.
You know, I find that when I'm talking to people who have a difficulty with their mental health, either now or had in the past, they have huge issues around, you know, being treated with decency, kindness, respect, being listened to. You know, suddenly, you know, if I go into a general hospital, and no matter how bad my circumstances are, and someone comes along and says to me, if you don't have this treatment, you're going to die. And I say, well, don't think so. I'm not going to have that. I'm listened to. It's different when you have a mental health difficulty. Somehow you're not going to be listened to.
Nunday is basically, we're going to try and break a Guinness World Record, and it's for the largest amount of people dressed as nuns in the one area. I choose to support Pieta House because I lost my own son to suicide 5 years ago. It had a huge impact on me and my family. I did find that maybe people walked away from me. After a while, I just kind of put that down to maybe issues that they might have had, not mine. And so yeah, there was a little bit. I think it's fear. I think people have a lot of fear around the subject. I think they're afraid if they talk about it, it'll encourage somebody else to do it. You know, there's a lot of taboos about the subject, which really need to be broken, I feel they really need to be broken. And I just a regular person, a regular mom, I have no idea why this happened. I have no idea why my son took his own life. And I suppose I'm really just trying to make a difference and hoping that it wouldn't happen to anybody else.
Mad Pride started in 2008. We're an events-based lobby group, so as you can see we're running an event here in Cork based around community activity, and all community, both mad and not, coming together in a space of kind of comfort and freedom. And we would always say that everyone has an element of madness to them, everyone has a bad day or a bad week, and all we're saying is come together and see that there's nothing wrong or different with any one of us.
All of us actually have mental health, and it's not something to be afraid of if you might experience more difficulties than someone else, and it doesn't also mean that you have it for life. And it's all those type of conversations we need to have that we're not having, and I think it's that silence that is creating the problems with the prejudice and discrimination, and then it's just allowed to keep going.
I think the most effective way in Ireland, given the way Ireland works, is for more and more people to come out and to be able to talk about it.
In some ways it's one of the last taboos, almost like coming out the closet. It's the last thing people with mental health problems need to come out of the closet like the gay movement did.
The more it's out there, the more people will talk about it, the more people will realise that it's something that affects everybody. If you think you don't know somebody who's been affected, it's just that you haven't had that conversation. These are subjects that affect absolutely everybody in this country.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this morning on the MV Killarney to launch our Make Arigho campaign. Evelyn McCarthy was the producer. She went around the country interviewing various people who told their story. One person who decided to speak out for this campaign is Hazel Larkin, and we're delighted that Hazel is with us today.
I have post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD. Saw me suicidal, believing that I truly was the worst scrap of humanity on the face of the earth. It left me convinced that the world, including my children, especially my children, would be better off without me. It left me terrified of the world and everyone in it. My symptoms were confounded by my attempts to conceal them from the world of normal people. But the relief that I found when I stopped doing that was phenomenal. My mental health is part of who I am, but it does not define me. So I no longer accept stigmatisation because I have post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that my rejection of it will erase stigmatisation overnight. The only way to exercise stigma is to educate it out of people. And the only way to do that is to challenge it. And the only way to do that is to speak out, to speak about it, to refuse to be silent, to tell the truth.
Mental health and suicide, they both have a certain amount of stigma surrounding them, and that is decreasing, I think, year on year. So 10 or 20 years ago, it just wasn't a topic that was being discussed to this extent.
It's less of a social pariah now. It still is, but it's less so because I think it's touching so many more people, or people are becoming more aware of the fact that it's touching them. You know, it's becoming more and more prevalent, and because of that, people are talking about it that bit more.
People are coming out more. They are beginning to talk about the difficulties they find in life. Sometimes they're difficulties that they'll carry with them through life, but in the most cases, they are difficulties which they will overcome and which they will recover from.
I've chosen to make it more public because I'm in a situation where I feel comfortable with that. I feel like I don't have the consequences maybe, because not every employer is okay with it, not every family member is okay with it, but many are.
God damn it, people with mental health problems are living among us, and it could be me or you tomorrow, and we need to learn from that and need to not be afraid of mental health anymore.